What if the secret to great leadership wasn't found in strategy, but in our own biology? Long before titles and boardrooms, true leaders were measured by one thing: who they fed first. The greatest leaders don't stand at the front for recognition. They stand at the back for protection. When we talk about leadership, most people immediately think of charisma, strategic thinking, or the ability to inspire. But beneath all the outward expressions of leadership lies something far more primal, something wired deep within our nervous system. This is the biology of trust. It is not an abstract concept, and it is not merely about agreeing with someone's vision. It is a measurable chemical state in the human body that changes how we perceive, feel, and act in the presence of certain individuals. Every human interaction sends a cascade of biochemical signals through our brain and body. These signals decide whether we feel safe or threatened, connected or isolated. Among these chemicals, one in particular stands out as the molecular foundation of trust: oxytocin. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone or cuddle chemical, but in the context of leadership, it is far more than that. It is the very substance that allows us to extend vulnerability toward another person, to believe that they have our best interest at heart, and to cooperate even in uncertain or challenging conditions. When oxytocin flows, walls come down. We open ourselves to collaboration. We feel a subtle but powerful sense of connection to those around us. When a leader makes a choice to protect their people rather than exploit them, they trigger a biological response in the group. It's not a metaphor, it's a literal chemical event in the brain. The limbic system, the part of our brain responsible for emotions and survival instincts, interprets that leader's behavior as a signal of safety. The amygdala, our internal alarm system, quiets down. In its place, oxytocin and serotonin begin to rise, and with them comes a deep, almost invisible shift. People become more willing to contribute, to take risks in their work, and to trust that even if they make mistakes, they will not be thrown under the bus. In environments where leaders place themselves at the center of power and take the biggest share of rewards, the opposite chemistry is triggered. Cortisol, the stress hormone, begins to flood the system. This was essential in our evolutionary past for escaping danger, but prolonged cortisol release in a modern work environment creates an atmosphere of suspicion, fear, and isolation. The human brain, when bathed in cortisol, stops thinking creatively and starts scanning for threats. In other words, people shut down, they stop collaborating, they retreat into self-preservation. This is the hidden cost of leadership without trust. It's not just a moral failure, it's a biological one. The biology of trust also explains why the concept of leaders eat last resonates so deeply across cultures and time periods. Long before corporate titles and job descriptions, human beings survived in small tribal groups. In those tribes, the alpha or chief had one primary role: to protect the group. This wasn't done out of generosity. It was a survival strategy for the tribe as a whole. If the leader took the first portion of food, left the group vulnerable, or abandoned them in times of danger, their own position was threatened because loyalty would dissolve. But when the leader ensured that every member of the tribe was cared for first, something remarkable happened. The tribe became fiercely loyal in return. The members would fight, hunt, and work tirelessly for the one who had proven they were worth following. That bond was not just social. It was deeply chemical, embedded into the wiring of the human brain. Today, the environment may have changed from the savannah to the office, but the wiring has not. We are still running on the same operating system that evolved thousands of years ago. Our brains still respond to acts of protection and fairness with oxytocin and release, and they still respond to perceived selfishness with stress hormones. Leaders who understand this don't just manage. They shape the very biology of their teams. They know that the subtle cues they give, making eye contact, listening attentively, taking responsibility before placing blame, are not just good manners. They are oxytocin triggers, neurochemical signals to every brain in the room that say, "You are safe here." But trust is not built through grand gestures alone. It is constructed through a consistent pattern of behavior, repeated over time, that the brain learns to associate with security. Think of the nervous system as a vigilant guard, scanning every interaction for danger or safety. One act of sacrifice from a leader may temporarily calm it, but if the following weeks are filled with indifference or selfish decisions, the chemistry shifts again. The trust response fades, replaced once more by guardedness. This is why leadership rooted in trust is not a single choice. It's a way of being. It is a leader's daily willingness to show up for their people in a way that aligns with their words. What makes this so powerful is that oxytocin does not work in isolation. When trust is established, serotonin, a neurotransmitter linked to feelings of pride, status, and belonging, also rises. People begin to identify more strongly with their group, to feel valued and recognized. This is the biological origin of loyalty, not as a contractual obligation, but as a heartfelt commitment. In such an environment, people will work harder, not because they are forced to, but because they genuinely want to see the collective succeed. This is the hidden engine behind high-performing teams. A leader who creates safety, which produces oxytocin, which fosters connection, which fuels shared purpose. And it doesn't stop there. When oxytocin levels are high, dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter, is released more easily in response to group achievements. This means people not only feel safer and more connected, but they also experience more pleasure when the group wins. The brain, quite literally, rewires itself to associate collective success with personal reward. Over time, this reshapes the culture from one of individual competition to one of shared triumph. It becomes less about I and more about we. Because the brain's chemistry begins to link personal satisfaction with the well-being of the group. Understanding the biology of trust allows us to see leadership not as a position, but as a biological responsibility. A true leader is not just managing people. They are regulating the chemical environment in which those people operate. In the same way that a gardener tends to the soil to allow plants to flourish, a leader tends to the emotional and chemical climate so that human potential can grow. Every decision they make either releases the chemistry of trust or the chemistry of fear. Every choice is a signal to the brain, this is a safe place to thrive, or this is a place to guard yourself. The long before skyscrapers, corner offices, and corporate ladders, we were tribespeople. We lived in small groups, bound not by contracts or quarterly targets, but by the deep, unspoken knowledge that our survival depended on one another. This ancient reality did not vanish when civilization advanced. It is still encoded in our nervous system, still shaping how we interpret the world, still dictating the way we respond to leaders and communities today. This is the essence of the tribal brain. The tribal brain is the result of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, designed to keep us alive in environments filled with uncertainty and danger. In the wild, a lone human had little chance of survival. Our ancestors thrived only by sticking together, pooling resources, and protecting each other from threats. The tribe became a survival machine, and at the center of this machine was a leader, not the strongest in the physical sense, but the one who ensured the tribe's safety and cohesion. This role was not symbolic, it was functional. A leader who failed to protect the group risked the collapse of the tribe and with it their own survival. Our brains learned to identify and follow those who demonstrated genuine care for the group's well-being. These were the individuals who stayed alert during the night, who shared resources in times of scarcity, who positioned themselves between danger and their people. When such behaviors were observed, the tribe's members experienced a surge of trust-based neurochemicals like oxytocin and serotonin, creating a loop of loyalty and cooperation. This was not merely emotional, it was biological. The human brain, attuned to subtle signals of safety and reliability, would relax its threat systems in the presence of such leaders, freeing up cognitive resources for creativity, problem solving, and long-term planning. Even now, thousands of years later, we are still tribal beings walking through a modern world. We still seek belonging because, to the brain, belonging equals safety. When we enter a new workplace, community, or social group, our ancient neural circuitry is scanning for familiar signs of tribal cohesion. Who is the protector here? Who ensures fairness? Who will share the burden when the group is under stress? This instinct is why we are drawn to leaders who eat last, because such actions mirror the patterns our ancestors relied upon to survive. The tribal brain is also wired for hierarchy, not for domination, but for order. In a prehistoric tribe, hierarchy allowed for efficient decision-making and resource distribution. The leader's role was not to hoard, but to manage and to serve. In return, the group offered loyalty, cooperation, and a willingness to follow when quick, decisive action was needed. This reciprocity is still the unwritten contract of leadership today. When leaders protect their people, the people protect the leader's vision. When leaders exploit their people, the tribe fragments, and the ancient survival alarm within each member begins to ring. This is why toxic leadership feels so destabilizing on a deep, visceral level. It is not just that unfairness is unpleasant, it is that our brain reads it as a survival threat. The moment a leader shows self-interest at the expense of the group, cortisol begins to rise in the bodies of the followers. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting danger, lights up, and suddenly the environment feels unsafe. This is the tribal brain's defense mechanism kicking in, urging us to withdraw loyalty and prepare to fend for ourselves. Conversely, when a leader demonstrates sacrifice, protection, and fairness, the opposite occurs. The tribal brain relaxes, shifting from survival mode to growth mode. This is when a group becomes capable of extraordinary feats, when members take risks for innovation, share information freely, and support each other without keeping score. They are no longer guarding their own survival. They are investing in the survival of the tribe. One of the most fascinating aspects of the tribal brain is that it is not limited to small groups anymore. Our neurochemistry does not know the difference between a hunter, gather a band of 20 and a modern company of 2,000. The same rules apply. The human brain, no matter the context, seeks signals of belonging, safety, and shared purpose. Leaders who understand this can create a culture, even in sprawling organizations. They do this by ensuring that people feel seen, valued, and protected, by creating micro-environments of trust within the larger system. But there is another side to the tribal brain, its exclusivity. While it can create powerful unity within the group, it can also be wary of outsiders. This was an evolutionary advantage when resources were scarce and strangers could pose a threat. Today, however, it can manifest as resistance to change, reluctance to collaborate across departments, or even hostility toward new team members. Great leaders recognize this tendency and intentionally expand the boundaries of the tribe, ensuring that newcomers are integrated quickly and given signals of inclusion. The faster the brain registers them as one of us, the faster they contribute fully without holding back. The tribal brain also thrives on shared rituals and symbols. In ancient tribes, these could be songs, dances, or marks of belonging. In modern teams, they might be shared language, inside jokes, or meaningful traditions. These rituals aren't trivial. They reinforce identity and cohesion. They act as constant reminders to the brain that I am part of something bigger than myself. This is why even small, consistent gestures from leaders, celebrating wins together, eating with the team, starting meetings with personal check-ins, carry more weight than they seem. To the tribal brain, they are proof that the leader is still aligned with the group, still invested in its unity. When we strip away the layers of technology, industry, and modern complexity, the truth is clear. We are still tribal beings responding to the same survival-based signals as our ancestors. We still crave leaders who will stand at the edge of the circle, facing outward toward potential threats while we work, create, and live inside the safety they provide. We still reward those leaders with loyalty, effort, and the willingness to go the extra mile. And when the bond is strong, when the tribe feels protected, we are capable of a level of cooperation and achievement that no individual could ever reach alone. In every era of human history, from the fire-lit gatherings of ancient tribes to the boardrooms of modern corporations, leadership had never truly been about titles or authority. It has always been about sacrifice. Not the abstract kind that sounds good in speeches, but tangible, observable acts where a leader gives up their own comfort, resources, or safety for the benefit of those they lead. This willingness to put others first is not just a moral ideal. It is the currency through which leadership is earned and maintained. Without it, trust evaporates, loyalty weakens, and the very foundation of a leader's influence begins to crumble. Sacrifice speaks directly to the deepest layers of the human brain. From an evolutionary standpoint, followers have always had one critical question in the presence of a leader. Will you protect me, even if it costs you something? When the answer is yes, when a leader proves through their actions that they are willing to absorb discomfort or risk, so others don't have to, the brain registers a profound shift. Oxytocin levels rise, stress chemicals lower, and a bond of trust is formed. This isn't a soft or sentimental reaction. It's a biological adaptation that helped our ancestors decide who was worth following in a dangerous world. In tribal societies, the leader's sacrifice was often literal. The leader might take the first watch during the night, standing guard while the rest of the tribe slept. They might endure hunger so that the young and the weak could eat first. They might walk into danger to defend the group from predators or rival tribe. These acts were costly, but they reinforced the idea that the leader's role was not to be served, but to serve. This pattern became so deeply ingrained in human social structures that we still expect it today, even if the forms of sacrifice have changed. In a modern context, sacrifice might not involve physical danger, but it is no less real. A leader might take responsibility when a project fails, shielding their team from external blame. They might forego personal bonuses to ensure their employees receive fair pay during a difficult financial quarter. They might spend extra hours mentoring and supporting team members, even when it means delaying their own tasks. In each case, the underlying message is the same: your well-being matters to me more than my convenience. This principle works because sacrifice is one of the most powerful demonstrations of intent. Words alone cannot create lasting trust. Promises without proof are fragile and easily broken. But when a leader acts in a way that clearly costs them something, time, energy, resources, or comfort, The brain interprets that as undeniable evidence of loyalty to the group. It tells the subconscious, this person will not abandon you when things get hard. And once that belief takes root, people are willing to follow that leader into uncertainty, even into hardship, because they know they will not face it alone. Sacrifice also sets the tone for the group's culture. When people see their leader making personal sacrifices, it creates a ripple effect. Members of the group begin to mirror that behavior, stepping up for one another, sharing burdens, and working for the good of the whole rather than just their own interests. This is how high-performance teams are built, not through fear or strict control, but through a shared commitment to each other's success, sparked by the leader's example. The opposite is equally true. When leaders place their own interests above the group, hoarding rewards, avoiding risk, or shifting blame, people's instincts tell them that they are on their own. The chemistry of trust collapses, replaced by the stress-driven behaviors of self-preservation. Collaboration fades, creativity diminishes, and loyalty becomes transactional at best. This is not because people are disloyal by nature, but because the brain will not invest in a relationship where the other party has proven they won't reciprocate when it matters most. What makes sacrifice such a potent form of leadership currency is that it cannot be faked for long. People are remarkably skilled at detecting insincerity. A leader might perform a single symbolic act of selflessness, but if their everyday decisions reveal a pattern of self-interest, the trust bank is quickly emptied. This is why genuine sacrifice is built on consistency. It's not about dramatic gestures, but about the small, repeated choices that quietly reinforce the message. I will carry my share of the weight, and more if I have to. There is also a deeper psychological dynamic at play. When a leader sacrifices for someone, it often triggers a reciprocal sense of responsibility in that person. This is not forced obligation, it's a natural response. Humans are wired to repay generosity, to balance the scales of mutual care. When team members see a leader protecting them, they often feel an instinctive desire to protect the leader's vision in return. This creates a self-sustaining cycle where sacrifice fuels loyalty, loyalty fuels commitment, and commitment fuels collective success. The transformative aspect of sacrifice is that it redefines the leader's role in the eyes of the group. Rather than being viewed as an authority figure who issues commands, the leader becomes a guardian, a steward of the group's well-being. This subtle shift changes the entire dynamic of power. People no longer follow out of fear or obligation. They follow because they want to. They see the leader's wins as their own, and the leader's struggles as shared challenges to overcome together. Sacrifice also acts as a filter for leadership itself. Anyone can occupy a position of authority, but only those willing to give something up for the sake of others truly lead. This is why in times of crisis, the real leaders often emerge from unexpected places, not necessarily the most experienced or the most charismatic, but the ones who instinctively step forward to shield others from harm, to take the first risk, to shoulder the heaviest load. The tribe recognizes these individuals instantly because the biology of trust has been activated, bypassing titles and formal structures entirely. In essence, sacrifice is the oldest and most enduring leadership currency we have. It is valued in every culture, in every era, because it taps into something universal. The longing to be part of a group where our safety, dignity, and well-being are protected by someone willing to stand in the gap for us. It assures us, at a level deeper than conscious thought, that we are not alone in the challenges we face, and that our leader's strength will be used not to dominate us, but to defend us. Safety is more than the absence of physical danger. It is the invisible foundation on which all human potential. is built when people feel safe. They open up, share ideas, and take the risks necessary for progress. When they do not, the brain reverts to survival mode, narrowing its focus to the most immediate threats and stripping away the capacity for long-term thinking, collaboration, and creativity. This is why true leaders make safety their highest priority, not just as a moral responsibility, but as a strategic necessity. The ripple effect of safety begins in the brain. At the core of our threat detection system is the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that acts like a sentinel, constantly scanning for danger. When it perceives a threat, whether real or imagined, it triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline, preparing the body for fight or flight. This reaction was essential for survival in our evolutionary past, but in modern environments, especially in workplaces, it can be triggered by things far less dangerous than predators: a hostile manager, fear of losing one's job, public humiliation, or feeling unsupported in a high-stakes project. In this state, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for problem solving, innovation, and strategic thinking, goes offline. Our ability to think creatively or collaborate effectively is drastically reduced. This is why leaders who allow fear-based cultures to develop often find their teams stuck in reactive patterns, unable to produce their best work. On the other hand, when leaders create a climate of psychological safety, the amygdala remains calm, the prefrontal cortex stays engaged, and people can operate from a place of trust and curiosity instead of defensiveness. Psychological safety is not built through empty reassurances or motivational slogans. It is created through consistent, observable behaviors that signal, "You are valued here," and "It is safe to contribute." This could mean a leader taking the time to listen without interrupting, acknowledging mistakes without assigning blame, or actively seeking out diverse perspectives in decision-making. Over time, these actions rewire the collective mindset of the group, shifting the baseline from fear to openness. When this shift happens, the ripple effect begins to spread. The first wave of change is individual. A person who feels safe begins to share more openly, to offer ideas they might have kept hidden, to take ownership of their work without the fear of being punished for missteps. This increased engagement is contagious. As others witness the positive response to vulnerability, they too begin to step forward. The second wave is relational. Safety fosters trust between team members, creating a sense of unity that transcends mere cooperation. People stop guarding themselves against one another and start actively supporting each other's success. In this environment, competition gives way to collaboration, not because competition is inherently bad, but because the group now sees that the greater victory lies in the collective achievement. The third wave of the ripple effect is cultural. As more individuals experience safety and trust, the entire environment shifts. New norms emerge. Open communication becomes the standard, mistakes are seen as opportunities to learn, and respect is given as a baseline rather than something to be earned through flawless performance. This is not a superficial change, it is a deep rewiring of the group's identity. People begin to believe at a subconscious level that this is a place where they can grow, contribute, and be supported. From a biological perspective, safety also affects motivation. In safe environments, the brain is more likely to release dopamine in response to progress and achievement. This means that success becomes intrinsically rewarding, not just externally incentivized. People are not simply working for a paycheck or recognition. They are working because the act of contributing to a thriving, supportive environment is deeply satisfying. The ripple effect of safety also extends beyond the immediate team or organization. People carry the effects of their environment into every other area of their lives. An employee who feels supported and trusted at work is more likely to be patient and engaged with their family, more confident in their social interactions, and more resilient in the face of personal challenges. The impact multiplies, creating secondary ripples in homes, communities, and networks far beyond the leader's direct influence. Safety also transforms how conflict is handled. In unsafe environments, conflict is often avoided or suppressed until it erupts in destructive ways. But in cultures where safety is established, conflict becomes a tool for growth. Disagreements are approached with curiosity rather than hostility, and feedback is given in a spirit of improvement rather than criticism. The focus remains on solving the problem rather than attacking the person. This approach strengthens relationships instead of weakening them, further reinforcing the cycle of trust. It is important to recognize that safety is not the same as comfort. Leaders who create safe environments are not shielding people from challenges. They are removing unnecessary threats so that individuals can face challenges from a position of strength. A safe environment is one where people are stretched, but never abandoned, where they are expected to perform at their best, but given the resources, support, and protection they need to get there. The most remarkable thing about the ripple effect of safety is that it requires no special authority to begin. While leaders have the greatest power to shape the environment, anyone can contribute to it. A single team member who consistently offers support, shares credit, and refuses to engage in blame, shifting, can start ripples of trust that spread outward, influencing the broader culture. Over time, these ripples can merge, creating a current strong enough to change the trajectory of the entire group. What leaders must understand is that safety is not a static achievement. It is a living, breathing condition that must be nurtured daily. The brain's threat detection system is always active, always scanning for changes in the environment. A single act of betrayal or neglect can undo months of trust building, sending the amygdala back into high alert and reactivating the patterns of fear and self-protection. This is why the most effective leaders treat safety not as a one-time initiative, but as an ongoing responsibility woven into every decision, interaction, and policy they implement. At the core of human survival lies one of the most ancient instincts, self-preservation. For our ancestors, this instinct was a matter of life and death. If you were alone in the wild, every moment demanded vigilance, watching for predators, competing for resources, and making decisions that ensured your own survival before anything else. This is why, even today, when we perceive a threat, our brain defaults to protecting ourselves first. It is a reflex embedded deep in our biology, powered by the limbic system and reinforced through countless generations. But while self-preservation kept us alive in the past, it also places limits on what we can achieve in the present. Self-preservation triggers the body's survival chemistry, cortisol, adrenaline, and a heightened state of awareness. This is useful when dealing with immediate danger, but it comes at a cost. The brain in survival mode is less open to creativity, less willing to take risks, and more focused on protecting what already exists than on exploring what could be. In this state, long-term vision shrinks into short-term defense. Collaboration suffers because every individual begins to guard their own resources, ideas, and energy. In contrast, collective evolution begins when the brain no longer perceives the environment as a threat. When safety and trust are established, the body shifts into a different mode, one that allows for growth, exploration, and innovation. Oxytocin and serotonin replace cortisol's dominance, and dopamine becomes the reward for moving forward together. This shift doesn't just change behavior, it changes how people see themselves in relation to the group. Instead of thinking, how do I protect myself, they begin to think, how do we grow together? The journey from self-preservation to collective evolution requires leadership that consistently reinforces safety, fairness, and shared purpose. When leaders demonstrate that the group's well-being is the priority, it begins to rewire how individuals calculate risk. A team member in a fear-based environment may hesitate to share a new idea, worried about criticism or failure. But in a trust-based environment, that same person is more likely to speak up, knowing their contribution will be received with openness. This is how the seeds of collective evolution are planted, through moments where personal risk feels worth taking because the group's progress is more important than individual comfort. In evolutionary terms, this shift mirrors a pivotal moment in human history, when small, self-protective family units began to merge into larger, cooperative communities. Alone, a family could hunt, gather, and defend itself to a degree. But together, as part of a larger collective, they could share resources, divide labor, and innovate in ways that no single unit could manage. This leap required trust. Trust that others would not exploit shared resources. Trust that the group would offer protection when danger came. It was the foundation for building villages, societies, and civilizations. The same principle applies today in organizations and teams. The leap from individual survival to collective progress is the leap from maintaining the status quo to creating breakthroughs. Collective evolution thrives on a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. In a scarcity mindset, people believe resources are limited. Recognition, opportunities, and rewards must be fought over. In an abundance mindset, resources are seen as expandable through collaboration and creativity. Leaders play a critical role in shaping which mindset dominates. If a leader hoards recognition, plays favorites, or encourages unhealthy competition, they reinforce scarcity thinking. But if they share credit, provide equitable opportunities, and model generosity, they cultivate abundance thinking, allowing the group to channel its energy toward shared goals instead of internal competition. This transformation is not purely philosophical. It is rooted in biology. When people operate in a collective evolution mindset, their brains release more reward chemicals in response to group achievements than to individual victories. This is because the emotional payoff is amplified by the social connection. Achieving something together satisfies not only the personal drive for accomplishment, but also the tribal brain's deep need for belonging and contribution. Over time, this rewires motivation itself, making collaboration not just a strategy but a source of personal fulfillment. However, the shift from self-preservation to collective evolution is not automatic. It requires constant reinforcement through both actions and environment. In early stages, individuals may still default to guarding themselves, especially if they have experienced betrayal or exploitation in the past. This is where consistent leadership becomes essential. Every decision a leader makes, how they handle conflict, distribute resources, acknowledge contributions, either strengthens or weakens the collective mindset. The more the leader demonstrates that no one needs to fight for survival within the group, the more energy can be redirected toward growth. As the collective mindset takes hold, something remarkable happens. The group begins to self-regulate. Members hold each other accountable not out of fear, but out of mutual respect and a shared commitment to the mission. Collaboration becomes second nature. People start offering help without being asked, sharing resources without expecting immediate returns, and thinking beyond their own roles to consider the bigger picture. The group's capacity for innovation expands because ideas are no longer filtered through the question, "How does this benefit me?" but rather, "How does this move us forward?" This is the essence of collective evolution. when the individual's success is inseparable from the group's success. It is not about losing personal identity or ambition. Rather, it is about aligning personal growth with collective advancement. In such environments, people achieve more than they ever could alone, because they are part of a system that amplifies rather than competes with their efforts. The tribe's progress becomes the individual's progress, and the individual's progress strengthens the tribe in return. The transformation from self-preservation to collective evolution mirrors the very path of human progress. Just as our ancestors moved from isolated survival to interconnected civilizations, modern teams and organizations must make the leap from protecting what they have to building what they could become. It is in this space, where trust eliminates the need for constant self-defense, where safety frees the mind to explore, and where shared purpose fuels collective ambition, that the highest forms of human achievement are made possible. Leadership, at its truest form, is not about authority, status, or privilege. It is about biology, trust, and the timeless human need for safety and belonging. The principles behind Leaders Eat Last are not simply moral ideals. They are rooted in the neurochemistry that has shaped human behavior for thousands of years. From the biology of trust that calms our survival instincts, to the tribal brain that seeks protection within the group, from the currency of sacrifice that earns loyalty, to the ripple effect of safety that unlocks creativity and collaboration, and finally, to the transformation from self-preservation to collective evolution, every step reveals the same truth. Leaders are the stewards of the environment in which people either shut down or rise to their full potential. When leaders choose to eat last, they signal that the well-being of their people comes first. This signal travels deeper than words. It enters the bloodstream as chemistry. It rewires the brain's perception of safety, and it reshapes the culture into one where trust is the default and unity is the natural state. In such an environment, individuals don't just work. They contribute, they innovate, and they stand together, willing to protect the leader's vision because the leader has already proven they will protect the people. This is not only how great teams are built. It is how human potential is unlocked on a scale far beyond what any one person could achieve alone.